All right, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give about another minute and a half for people to jump in, and then we'll get started.
There's always a bit of a mad rush in the last sort of like minute or two as you kick these things off. So always good to give it a couple minutes.
Yeah. All right, we're at the minute. Let's do it. All right, welcome everyone. We're here today to present premium features or advanced features for TrackVia. We're gonna show off a topic slide here. So what we're going to cover today, after the welcome and introductions from Brandon and myself, we're going to look at the topics of one, just some ideas and some customer stories, and then we're going to let Brandon demo what we talk about. So we're going to see kind of both sides of the equation, just the stories and the wins, and then we're going to see the product in action as well, which is always a favorite. So I'm Taylor Termentozzi. I'm our Director of Customer Success here at TrackVia. Been around for just about 7 years. I came from the onboarding team as a Customer Success Manager, and now I'm in management for our Customer Success team. And I talk to a lot of customers. I know a lot of you out there. I know a lot of the stories, the use cases, and what's worked and what's kept you as customers. And Brandon, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon Gill. I'm our Director of Sales Strategy and Operations here at TrackVia. So heading up our pre-sales team as well as our sales operations team. So my team's usually the folks that are showing off these features. So as we get into the demo and sort of address what these features are, how they're beneficial, I'm also going to walk through how you can set them up and where they can be most beneficial in your application or applications in the future. So excited to be chatting with everyone today.
Thanks, Brandon. All right, so we're going to start off with Workato integrations, and if you don't know what Workato is, you're going to learn about it today. But it's a platform that TrackVia has partnered with and has created easy models to integrate with. But it's an integration platform. And then we're going to talk about some documents, document creation specifically, and what and where can you put these documents that you create out of TrackVia. Then we're going to look at our promotable sandboxes, not a new feature, but a feature that is kind of used differently across many different organizations. And we wanted to highlight today how to use that in some of the best practices that we recommend after being in the wild for a little while now. And then in the end, we're going to tie it together with automation. A lot of this will come through the demos, but how do we chain different items and features together in TrackVia to create this premier experience? All right, so number one, when working with Workato, there are tens of thousands of different software systems that Workato can integrate with out of the box. So there's the different logos you see here are connectors. Basically, there's a set of functions that come out of each of these software systems that just kind of give you easy functionality. It's a drag and drop platform for integration, similar to TrackVia is for workflow tools. And outside of these common connectors, right, you can build and customize and work with different software systems and use the open API and a lot of more of the developer tools that you'll need to create them. So what I'm going to do today is walk through a few different examples of how our customers today use these connections and hopefully inspire the rest of you on ideas of what to integrate and some fun ideas to take back and sort of workshop yourself. So the number one thing, and funny enough, TrackVia uses this. This is right out of our own playbooks, and our sales team uses this. So you feed TrackVia, maybe you have some contract details, some dates, some dollars. You're ready to send a contract over. That executes an integration that goes to Salesforce. it fires and changes the status of an opportunity. And then if it goes to DocuSign, right, we know who the parties are that need to sign internally and externally with your clients. And then once the document's executed, right, all of these steps in each of these systems are actionable and fire additional steps. So once the DocuSign is signed and a contract is formally executed, that goes to Salesforce, right? That's a closed won opportunity. And then maybe you have an internal gong channel in Slack, like we do it here at TrackVia. And hey, awesome, we hit this renewal. This customer is happy. They bought some more users. Whatever the win is, it automates the celebration instead of your VP of sales needing to fire off an internal email or just not really hearing about it at all. Next up, this is a really popular integration that I wasn't expecting, and I'm using Outlook here as an example, but this works with Gmail and I think one other email provider. But a good idea here that we've seen our customers just come up with on their own is if you have a standardized email, maybe it's for your returns department or it's for a help desk, right? You have a standard email and there's a format similar like I've described here. There's a PO number, and always after the PO number, right, is the PO number. Maybe it came from a survey. It's predictable is the key here. When you get an email, Workato can, what we'll call here today, read the email, right? We're scanning for a certain text, we're looking for PO, and then we're taking the 10 digits that come after it before a line break. We can take that information and then grab the name, and we can go back into TrackVia, right? There's like I said, a return. We get an email, we search for that PO number, we double check that it's the right customer. We can change the status that, hey, someone needs to call this customer back, or there's an expected return. Maybe you send shipping labels automatically, but you just turned a pretty human intensive process of watching and handling emails to be automated and sort of take the human piece out of it. So lots of steps you can add on to this, but in general, right, just start with the email. You can also flip this. Maybe I want to do something in TrackVia and generate an email out to my customer. I want to say, hey, Mr. Customer, your order is on its way. Here's your tracking number. On behalf of the shipping team, thank you, right? And the return address can be set up manually. So even though Workato is sending it, the return address is, shipping@trackvia.com, and any replies can go back to a system like this, or a human can intervene. So both sending and receiving, taking a human out of it. This one's popular. This one took a little bit of work to figure out in the first place. And the brevity of this slide is no way inclusive of what it takes to set up. There's certainly some legwork here. Reach out to us to TrackVia. We're here to help you set this up because it was difficult the first time, and the rinse and repeat is much easier for us. We'll use Workday here. I've seen this with ADP and a few other Active Directory systems. But hey, you add a new employee into Workday. That employee is in the HR department. When you set their role or their job title, Workato picks up, hey, there's a new employee added to your Active Directory. Let's see if their job title or their role matches a role in TrackVia that we've sort of pre-configured to say these roles need to be permissed to these apps and these roles in TrackVia, not to mix up the same role of your organization and the role in TrackVia. But right, there's some sort of setup where like this is the predefined permissions for each app that an employee of this job title should have. So Workato looks at this lookup table. Okay, the HR individual should be assigned to the HR app, the support app, and the all employees app. And that will configure their role for them, and they're done. Maybe it's a base standard, and they can be modified from there or added to additional applications. But you've taken some of the legwork could generally be slow on an individual basis for a new employee onboarding, and you've automated that with Workato and TrackVia in your Active Directory together. This one might be my favorite. This is a customer story, and there's a nugget of information that I'll share around like time savings here, and you can calculate that how you'd like to. The short of it is this company, they deliver a product, and every day before they deliver a product, what they used to do pre-TrackVia or even pre this process is call up every customer. Hello, Mr. Customer, we have an order coming out tomorrow. It's big and it's heavy and you need to be there so we can put it inside of your house. You're gonna be there? Okay, awesome. Or you're not gonna be there? Let me move your scheduled day. We're gonna call you back in 5 days and get you a new date. Now I'll talk about Workato and Twilio here. Twilio is an automated texting and calling service if you're unfamiliar. But what Workato does here is we just look at a view in TrackVia, and it's a customer, what they're getting delivered, and a phone number, a cell phone number. And Twilio and Workato just go through this list and send the automated text that you see here on screen, right? If you've ever been at work, some random number calls you, you don't answer, maybe they get a voicemail, maybe you don't. But this text, what it's done for this company is their response rates through the roof, and they're, it's easy. I can do this at work. It's a yes or a no, and if it's a yes, it's confirmed that delivery is going to happen. The shipping team is confident that they're not loading heavy materials on a truck that they're going to bring back tonight and have to try to reschedule. That's tough on the man hours and tough on the back as well. So, if they say no and reschedule, I'm not going to be there, awesome. That goes into a different queue, and maybe we'll call you or just send us the time that works, and we'll update your delivery schedule. Now, the real savings here that's crystal clear is this used to be one person's full-time job to call and confirm and reschedule. And rescheduling used to be more difficult without, TrackVia. Just you change the date, you go out and pull a PO out of a stack of deliveries. So for them, it was really easy. What's 40 hours a week? That's one full person. Okay, what's their salary? Boom, there's our savings. Now we can put this individual to a task that's of greater value that doesn't need to be automated through a service like this. I think that there is, and the cost of like per text message, I don't remember what it is with Twilio, but the savings is significant, certainly.
And I think too with this one, Taylor, one of the things I love about the text message information, whether it's Twilio or another services, many of you know we've had native emails out of TrackVia for a long time, but people have often asked about, well, what about text? What if I want to go a step further? This is a great way to sort of expand that, go a step further, be able to send text notifications. This is now in your working queue, whatever, and you can do that a similar way.
Yeah, absolutely. And the email that we give out is great, but when they respond to that, that goes to an alert, or there's a different email address there who fills in. Yeah, I think it's very complementary in that TrackVia is not in the text messaging world, and I don't know if we plan to be, but this is a fantastic solution that's ready out of the box.
Yep.
Next up, this is a fun and popular one. Take data from TrackVia and feed it to my reporting engine. There is sort of mixed needs of who likes to report out of TrackVia directly and who wants to feed a data lake or a data warehouse and needs reporting, the high level tools that Power BI or a Tableau or another system provide for reporting that, hey, your board or your directors need. It's recently come to my attention that you can also use Google Sheets for this same purpose. And what Google Sheets does is, hey, it's the online, Google Docs. And with Sheets, you can create a pivot table. And when TrackVia through Workato exports a view of, orders that were added today, that dumps to Google Sheets or another one of your reporting tools. And the pivot data automatically, when you add new data, it absorbs it and has a pivot data. So now you can have a zero cost reporting tool, right? Just the Google suite, I suppose, and have some advanced charts that maybe combine data from different systems that maybe are not housed in TrackVia, or just have some different capabilities that you're looking for. So in general, what customers have been using here is every night I'm exporting this, here's where it goes, and Workato that Brandon will demonstrate in a little bit is like how simple that actually is. And if this fails, I send an alert to Brandon, hey, your sales data didn't upload last night, intervene. Couple of our customers that work out in the warehouse, what they have, right? Maybe it's a queue of what needs to be done today. Boom, it's up on a big TV in your warehouse, and the data is refreshed, and right, it's an active queue that comes right out of TrackVia. You don't need any special hardware to do that. Get your old TV or old monitor, put it somewhere in the warehouse, and boom, you have live reporting in remote areas. The bonus tip here that I'll share is if you're using TrackVia for your reporting capabilities and you want it to be on a television, as most of you are admins, what you probably are aware of is, hey, I need to refresh my screen to get the most up-to-date and live data, right? The dashboards aren't dynamically updating on their own. There are browser extensions that set a refresh time, and you can set it to 5 minutes or 1 hour, whatever's works best for your business. You just set your browser on a TV in the warehouse to refresh every 30 minutes. Boom, there you go. You can use TrackVia for live reporting or live-ish reporting based on your need. Okay, so that takes us through Workato and some of my favorite customer stories and really what we got out of using Workato or in these different suites. Hopefully that is providing some good ideas and inspiration on what you all can use. Don't feel restricted by what was shown. If it's it's a different type of the same software, check out on Workato, it's most likely there. What we're talking about next is documents, and documents out of TrackVia, the native print function generally isn't what some customers want. If it's customer facing or it's an actual contract, right? You want some branding, you want as much customization as you need or as your customers might be used to. And to prevent that feeling of a gap of what they had before and what they have now, a company we've partnered with as well is called FormStack. And Brandon's going to take us through and show us a setup and sort of some of the configurations inside of FormStack. But what I'm going to talk about here in my section of the presentation is what do we start with and what's sort of some of the prerequisites. So here's a TrackVia order form. If as a customer, you've seen these. Here's your new users. Here's your renewal. Here's your order form. And to work through the process with FormStack and get this to work how you want, right? We start with a template. I've got a small example on this side, right? We came from these carbon copy pieces of paper. This can be triggered by a Workato or a microservice. We've got a couple different flavors of how FormStack can be triggered. But really what you need on the document, like I was shown with the order form, is you build a template and you use the curly brackets here to identify fields that are ready for input, right? You don't want to put it in the order number title, you want to put it in the order number field next to it. And what you can do with triggering this out of TrackVia is it can generate different document types, but just PDF and DocXs are the most normal. And then where does it go? Do you want to put it in TrackVia? Do you want to send it to someone? Do you want it to attach someplace else in a different software, maybe like in box.com? All those are possible. And like I said, Brandon will show it off. Next topic for today is Sandbox and the push to production. So Sandbox came first. That was really our V1. Pushing to production is V2 or 3, whatever iteration we want to talk about here. What I want to highlight today is how different companies are using this. So depending on the size of your organization, the promotable feature is of different value. The SDLC, right, the software development lifecycle, there are rules that certain companies must follow on promotion schedules. TrackVia is awesome, we're low code, you can make changes in an instant. Some companies say, I don't like that about you guys. I don't want my admins to be able to change a dashboard in the middle of the day while someone's working and move their cheese, if you say. That's fine, we get that. And so our approach to this is the promotable sandbox. If you don't want changes to happen in production without a proper testing cycle, what you can do is you lock down production by creating a promotable sandbox, right? Production can't change. Your super admins and app admins can access your sandbox. You make your changes, and right, you then comes in your testing team or your individual tester. You get approvals. Maybe you want to create some documents on what you change, and you input this into a process of, okay, now that we have the approval, what's our timing? And is that standardized? Maybe you want to promote every month or every 2 weeks on the weekend. So you go through the process, lock down production, build and change, have your testing team come in and sign off. And then, all right, Sunday at 10 p.m., we are promoting our sandbox. Monday morning when the staff comes in, they know what's changed. Maybe we highlight it in our newsletter. Maybe we just post our changes somewhere where everyone can find them. This helps with compliance, right? Now we know what changed and when, that we can utilize our change logs. And what I'll show here next is, here's a couple of the emails that you receive when creating a promotable sandbox the first time you're the button clicker in this case. And when you promote, right, we're also announcing the date and times that these happen. What I personally recommend is create a table in TrackVia to house your change logs. And you'll see in my screenshot here, I have the notes of what happened, right? You have your change logs, and there's all the details are down to the minutia are stored there. But I also just want like a brief title of what happened. Like, hey, we added this new role, or we added these new dashboards, or we did a cleanup this month and deleted these things. Throw in a quick notes field, and don't make someone read through the logs just to figure out when something might have changed. Then I could say, boom, okay, the release on September 1st of having the customer contacts table, that broke something, or maybe my app script failed from there. You're adding compliance into your own process by storing them in TrackVia. Okay, we're going to finish off with an app script story time before I hand it over to Brandon and we can see the product live and some of these different features that we talked about. So this is a use case that we utilize for different customers, and really it's agnostic. But what I'll talk about here today is we have one of our mortgage clients who really, I would say, co-found this ability, and really just working with our implementation team and professional services to come up with this idea. And it's brilliant. It works incredibly well. And we use TrackVia to run TrackVia, and I use this on a daily basis. So the story goes like this. There is a team, and this team their job is quality control. And in this case with mortgages, it's loans. So how it started is they had a fat book, and here in this book there are all the different scenarios. If it's this type of loan in this state, here are the quality control steps we must take to be in compliance with the federal government. Said, okay, that's great. We're very well documented over here. For these documents, we need to take these steps. For these different loan attributes, we know what to do. Okay, we feel covered. Now you tell your quality control team to increase their output and their timeliness of how fast they process their loans. And the time equals money here. So they said, well, how do we take a super defined process, give it to teams that we stand up or stand down, or maybe they're seasonal, and how do we train them to follow this book and do so quickly? Input TrackVia in this app story. app script story. So here's what they did. They took this big book of what to do, and they normalized the data inside of it. And what I mean by that is they use relationship fields, like there are certain documents, there are certain loan types, right? They created all these different tables that house the attributes. Then they created what we call like the master quality control table in TrackVia, and it has for every question in my big QC book, for this loan type or all of these loan types in these states, here's one question. This table is massive. There's hundreds of different questions for the different attributes. Now that you have this master spreadsheet created in TrackVia, now you're ready, and you've normalized it to prevent errors from happening. You know, someone's not typing in a type of loan, it's a drop-down value. Now you're ready to build a script, and what the script does is when I assign an auditor or a quality control person to a loan, there's an app script that says, okay, here's the attributes for this loan. Go to my master quality control table, find all of the relevant questions that this person needs to answer for this loan. So the question list isn't a massive book. It's all questions that we for sure know must be answered, and it's a requirement instead of if this, then that through a book, right? Tons of room for errors. Now that we've executed the app script, the child table gets created full of questions, right? We're showing a small example here in a moment. So we're pulling from this database, like I said, right? It's this type of document, it's these types of loans, and then there's a question on the far right side that I've hidden for brevity purposes. And what happens is every quality control individual answers all the questions, and there are a massive decrease in errors. The voila moment here is we can now report on the questions that were passed or failed, and if something goes through quality control and it's passed and later becomes an error, we know the document here where it's failed. Maybe what's the problem? Is the problem how we phrase the question, or is it an individual that is passing something that then becomes a failure, right? You can use the data to make actionable insights here. The way I describe this is if someone has failed something, hey, look, it's Brandon Gill. He waived something that later became a problem. I'm going to go to Brandon Gill and I'm going to sit him down in a training and I'm going to talk to him. Where's the confusion here, right? I can now prove that instead of, in a normal process, I'm just kind of blind. Errors are errors. We're going to rework them where they occur. So we'll go through the improvise, adapt, overcome here. That's what we're doing. We put out a whole solution. We tried it and we fix it. Shout out to Bear Grylls here for the quote. And really where I'll finish you off here. I know I said the last one, but the automation piece of TrackVia is how do we take all these premium features and string them together? How do we daisy chain the features to create the best possible experience that you can? If the process that I just walked you through, we're using, data that we built, we're building a database, we're using app scripts. And when I use a flow in this example that I have on screen, I'm selecting a loan, I'm assigning a quality control person, the app script executes, and by the time I get to the next step in the flow, the app script is done. So all my questions that I need to answer are populated, and I don't have to do any refreshing, and maybe I want to create a document from here. That's the last step. When the quality control individual is finished, I am now ready to send it off somewhere. All right, well, that's enough of me. So up next, Brandon Gill, get ready for the live demo.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for the introduction, Taylor. I'll start getting my screen shared here in just a second, but for those on the line, as we discussed, what we're going to walk through today is everything that Taylor has sort of already alluded to. We're going to talk through how you can utilize some of these tools like Workato, like FormStack, like Sandbox, how you can set them up, and really what the benefit is to these tools as we go throughout increasing and enhancing our abilities within TrackVia. So what you're seeing on the screen right now, just for a little context, is an application that we built just to show off some of these features. It's not a very complex application, but essentially this application is an expense tracking application. So we're tracking expense reports, whether that's for employees that are traveling, whether that's for invoices that we may have, and things like that. But what we're doing here is we're going to focus this time to build out an expense, have that expense create a FormStack document so that we have it on, on paper essentially as a PDF. We're going to have that kick off a integration through Workato. So we're going to see all of those different things. Then we'll also look at some of the other features like Sandbox, app scripts, and flows as well. So in order to get us started here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring a mobile device over, and we are going to start by submitting an expense. And in this case, I'm going to be in the role of Taylor. So everything on this dashboard is fit for Taylor. And I'll go ahead and just submit this new expense on a mobile device. When I do that, it's going to ask me a couple questions like what's our expense category here? And I can click into that, and I'll just say it's an employee meal. And what's our expense type? We'll say this is a sales expense. What I'm doing right now is I'm walking through a flow. For anyone that's not taking advantage of flows, flows are essentially a way to walk our end user through a series of forms and views and questions and things like that. So we're on one form right now, but now if I click forward to add a date and amount, it's going to continue us on where we're going to start to fill out some more information. So I've got the basic stuff up top. Now I can start to say, what's the due date of this expense? What's the amount I'm expecting for this expense? I can take a photo of a receipt. So I've got a receipt sitting right here. So I can grab that photo, for example. Then I can also annotate on these photos. So if I want to call out a particular area, maybe we need to put a circle around where the actual expense is on the receipt. And then I can add other expenses as well. If I hit this yes button, the flow is going to recirculate to add another expense, or I can say no, and we'll just hit save on that. When I do that, a couple of different things are going to happen in this example. I'll move my mobile device back over. And if I refresh my screen here, you're going to see that we've had a new item added. Here is the PDF document that was generated via FormStack. We'll take a look at that in just a second. And if I pull that over, what you're going to see is essentially all of the information that we just put in place here, Taylor, sales expense, employee meals, due date, amount, and the image is being generated in a PDF. Now, this is a pretty basic example of a PDF that I put together that's basically just pulling the TrackVia line items over into a document, and you can customize this document however you want. I've got the TrackVia logo in the top left, I've got expense request, I've got some information down here, but it lets us take a look at those PDFs. Now, how did we get to that point? We went through and we added expenses, we walked through that, there was an integration that had to happen. Let's talk a little bit about what got us to that point of being able to create that document. First and foremost, what happened is we created this document within FormStack. So I'm going to shift over my tab here. We are now looking at an example of FormStack. FormStack is a company that we've partnered with in order to do that document creation. And what FormStack allows us to do is create whatever types of documents we may want, and we can edit those however we'd like to as well. I'm working out of this one right here that's called Expense Report. And if I click into here, there's a few different ways that we can manage these documents within FormStack. Generally speaking, folks are going to build these templates in Microsoft Word or something like that, something that gives you the flexibility to create these templates. But then once they're created, you can have them generate as PDFs or anything like that. So in my case, I can see how often these merges have been happening. I can actually manage this file. For example, if I open Office Online, this is sort of the raw data behind this template. And as Taylor mentioned, we can have our employee, expense type, expense category, things like that. And using these brackets, we're sort of coding. It's not really a formal way of coding, but we're kind of telling the system, go find this field in TrackVia and bring that field into this location of the document. And then up top here, this is just basic stuff within Microsoft Word. I've added my own image, I've added some text in here. So you can format these documents however you'd like and then have them generate as PDFs. Additionally, you can test these things, again, have them come across in a couple of different file formats. And then another thing that's really important that people ask us a lot about is routing of these documents. Great, I've been able to create the document out of TrackVia. I have a PDF of it. Can I email that around? Can I send it to people? Can I get it sent for signature? Things like that. One way to do that is actually to do it directly out of FormStack. If I take a look in here with this email that's getting sent, I've actually received an email on my email, I'll show you here in just a second, telling me that a new expense was submitted, and I can see that, and the routing is going to happen here. Right now, I have this set up to send to a specific email. I'm having it send directly to me just for demonstration purposes, but we can also have it send to a merged field. So this is going to let us actually look at a different field in TrackVia. And if we have an email type field, I could say, send this to the person that submitted it, send it to the approvers, whatever the case may be there. So we can actually change who is going to receive that email. And just for some context here, if we want to take a look at an example of that email, I can drag over my email here, and you're going to see, hello, a new expense report has been submitted for your review. I can see that expense report. So we're getting those emails routed to us directly from FormStack in this case. Now, that's just one piece of it. The FormStack piece is what's going to allow us to have these documents, generate these documents, create these templates for us. But how do we actually get that information from TrackVia into FormStack? We do that via Workato, as Taylor mentioned earlier. Now, how do we access Workato? Well, if you have Workato turned on in your account, the way you access Workato is to go over here to our menu, and you'll see a drop-down, on the drop-down, an option called Integrations. If you select Integrations, and you say, take me to TrackVia Integrations, it'll actually open up Workato for you. So due to our partnership, they're integrated directly into TrackVia so that we don't really have to do anything, have any special login. It will log us directly into Workato from TrackVia. Now, how do we actually build these integrations? Well, the beautiful thing of Workato, and one of the reasons why, as TrackVia, we decided to partner with them, is they are also a low-code tool of sorts, but they're more of a low-code tool for integration building. So, for example, if I take a look at the integration that is running right now that's connecting my TrackVia instance with my WebMerge instance, or my FormStack instance, rather, I can see that this is the recipe that's running. A new record is added into a view in TrackVia. It's then going down and merging with a document in FormStack. The product specifically in FormStack was once called WebMerge. And then I'm uploading that file directly into TrackVia. All of this is happening real time. So as we add information into TrackVia, this is all happening very quickly. And there's a few different things I want to call out when it comes to Workato. For one, Workato is very easy to use. If I want to stop this recipe and make any changes to it, to actually make updates to a Workato recipe or create a new Workato recipe, it's designed to be very drag and drop, very straightforward, similar to TrackVia. For example, we have a trigger. So what's going to kick this recipe off, for example? And you can just kind of read it across the top. A new record added to a view in TrackVia is going to kick this off. And what we're looking at here is we're going to look at the application expense tracking, which is the one we were just looking at. We're going to look at our default expenses view, and then we're going to jump down here where we're going to be able to lay out employee lookups, expense types, expense categories, things like that, have that merge directly into that document, and then upload that PDF into TrackVia so that it's easy for us to see and use within the actual system. Now, a couple of other things to call out when it comes to Workato, we start this recipe up again, is we have these sort of tabs across the top. The first tab is our recipe. This is going to walk us through what the recipe does, how many successful jobs we've had, how many failed jobs we have, things like that. The second tab is our jobs. So these jobs are going to show us every time an individual recipe runs. And that's important because you can see here, I've got a few that failed, frankly, for one reason or another, but I can do really quick error handling within Workato because I can just hover over this, see why it failed, hover over one, see how quickly it was successful. So it makes that error handling much quicker and more efficient than traditionally working out of the API or anything like that. Additionally, when it comes to Workato, I can see what connections are happening within this particular recipe. So most of our customers only have one account of TrackVia, so it's pretty straightforward. Some of our customers have multiple though. So they might need to see which TrackVia account is connected into this particular recipe and which account of my other system would be connected as well. Probably one of the biggest benefits of Workato is the version control. So you can see that I've worked on this over the last couple of days. I've got a couple different versions. I tried out some different things, and I can always revert back to an older version if I need to. So should we start having issues, or we experimented a little bit and it didn't work, we can easily revert back to an older version. Finally, under settings, we can look at things like usage metrics, how often is this recipe running, things like that. It just kind of gives us a sense for how healthy is this particular recipe. Now, we've talked a lot about recipes. Recipes are essentially how we want to connect two systems together. But another important component of Workato is our actual connectors. And as Taylor mentioned earlier, there are a lot of different connectors within Workato. I'm just going to kind of talk while I scroll here, and you can see the breadth of all the different connectors that we have here. There's your main systems like Salesforce, Workday, Oracle, SAP, things like that. Some of the examples that Taylor walked through that we can connect into. But then we also have some more niche softwares that are already in here. And one of the most common questions we get is, well, what if I have a tool that is not already a connector in Workato? The short answer to that question is that's okay. Workato actually has some pretty interesting tools that allow us to use a connector called an HTTP connector that ties into the API of whatever tool you do have and sort of make it a connector for you. So realistically speaking, any software that has an API, Workato can still be an option to connect into and have all the functionality that you've just seen here. So I know we walked through a handful of different examples. Those are some of my favorite ones, the text ones that Taylor talked about, things like that. But overall, very powerful tool in Workato.
Yeah,
so
and
if we come back,
maybe one thing we could highlight real quick is, yeah, you don't have to have an active Workato license to see what's there. Just go to their webpage and search for whatever you want, and it gives examples as well, and it's a community and is all shareable.
Absolutely, and they're a best-in-class software as well when it comes to these integration partners. So they have extensive documentation. If you have a question and you're not sure, do they have this connector, do they not? You can search for it, or of course reach out to your account manager or CSM. We'd be happy to help you out with that as well. Okay, so very quickly, we've covered off on Workato, we've covered off on FormStack. Let's talk about a couple of other different features that can be beneficial. So as we've gone through our example, we've been able to submit an expense here. One thing I want to call out is something that Taylor mentioned toward the end there with the automation and app scripts. What's happened here in this example is we've submitted an expense from the role of Taylor. When that expense gets submitted, I have a few people that need to approve that expense. And so what we're doing is, because this is a sales type expense, we're going to go down the list of the people on the sales team who may need to approve that. This is all auto-generated using an app script. And if we want to take a look at that app script, we can just go into our table editor and look at that app script. And this is what the app script looks like. And all this is saying is, when we submit an expense, look up what kind of expense and auto-generate some records down below to let people know that they now need to do something. It saves a lot of time instead of sitting there and sort of manually adding in, this person needs to do this person needs to do that. Simple scripts like this, if you can incorporate them into your application, can really save a lot of time and make your process a lot more efficient. Because now what's happened is, as we've gone through and this expense has been submitted, I can now be notified if I go to the dashboard, my expenses and approvals. This is sort of looking at things from the realm of myself, and I can see here are some expenses that I need to approve. And I've got a totally different dashboard here, but as these things get added, I can get notified. Of course, I can get a TrackVia alert if we want to take a look at this. 11 minutes ago, I got this alert that there's an expense that I need to approve. And what I can do is I can actually approve these things from a mobile device. And the beauty of mobile devices, whether you're taking advantage of it or not, is that it's all native. So we have a native mobile application that you can get in the App Store, the Google Play Store. Everything that you build on the desktop is going to be available for you on the mobile device. And from here, I can do things like clicking into the tasks that need my approval. I can click into that one we just submitted. I can see the invoices. I can even go up to that parent record that we submitted earlier, see all the photos, see things like that, and then go back down. I can even see the PDF, and then go back down and say, do I want to approve it? And in this case, I'll say I will approve it, and I've got a show hide rule here that if I say approve, it's going to ask me for a date, and it's going to ask me for a signature so I can sign off. Now think about that for a second. What we've done here is, from a mobile device, we've gone ahead and issued a sign off here. Think about how that could be incorporated into something like a form stack. Now we could have all of our documents being created in TrackVia. We could do a sign off. We could send that to FormStack. We could integrate that into DocuSign. So we have the signatures going all the way to DocuSign, and then we could have those go out for signature, have them route wherever they need to route, and have them route to whoever they need to route to as well. So as you start to look at combining all of these sort of advanced features, it can really extend well beyond sort of the standard features that we've all come to know and love out of TrackVia. A couple of other things that I want to call out as well is, you recall that we went through, and I mentioned flows earlier, and how flows sort of walk you through different forms and things like that when we were filling out that expense. If we take a look at what that flow looks like, if I look at the flow for submitting a new expense, it's very straightforward to lay out some of these workflows within TrackVia using our flows feature. Many of our customers are taking advantage of flows daily. Some folks maybe are not taking advantage of flows yet. So I want to quickly talk about this. This is available to everybody, but what it allows you to do is have a starting point and sort of visualize what that workflow should look like. So we submit an expense using our expense details form. We're going to go find that expense and then add the dates and the amounts to it. We have a decision point here that says, do we want to add multiple expenses? Maybe you went on a business trip, maybe you're at a conference, whatever. We can loop back and continue to add more, or we can say no and take it to the end there. So Flows is a tool we introduced a number of years ago, but if you've never seen it before, this is a very powerful tool that can really expedite a lot of the workflows that you may be doing today just with adding records or things like that. So one of my favorite tools within TrackVia as well.
Yeah, Brandon, I think it's interesting when we pop the hood open and working with customers on maybe an audit. So many of the flows we see are all linear, and it's just add a record, exit. And there's no time savings there. You could just hit the plus button. Yeah, you get the big flow button, and now you can change the color and stuff. But a linear flow it hurts me a little bit. It's sad. You can build in these flows and add in your app scripts, and you can build some intense diagrams in this decision tree of what should happen. And we love to see the complex ones. So if anyone out there on the line right now wants to show their flow off, please, we pass the screenshots of diagrams around internally into the product teams to showcase.
Definitely. Yeah, we've seen some that are massive with 80 different ways that your decision can go. Plus, you can kind of change these around. I saw one that looked like Bart Simpson one time, so that's kind of fun. You can actually change the way these lines kind of come together. But the reality is these can be very powerful, whether it's a decision tree of 80 decisions or it's just looping back on a decision. These can really save a lot of time and be very powerful just as you start to advance the way you use TrackVia. Now, in the time we've got left, we've got about 10 minutes left here. What I want to sort of finish with is two different things. One is analytics and some different things that we have going on our analytics side. And the second one is Sandbox, which Taylor talked about as sort of our dev environment, what we can do there. We'll touch on analytics here. Many of you are already using analytics. We have sort of the standard bar charts, pie charts, things like that. Those are used very commonly within TrackVia. We have some other view types as well, like calendar views, lanes views, timeline views, location views, things like that. And then another type of view that we have that many folks utilize, but I think some folks maybe don't know the power behind it, is a pivot chart. So certainly when you're working with things like financials, this is very common in our financial services space, you can start to break down those financials on a time basis. You can go as far as to break it down onto a grandchild basis, so I can see sort of which projects are generating how much revenue in what period of time. You can go to a lot of layers of detail with these. And to change them and update them, you have this whole different menu on the side. It's different than our normal views, but it allows you to say what you want the columns, the values, the rows to be within your pivot chart. You can set conditional formatting on these pivots. And the way to find it is as you create your views, if you go to the view option, if a pivot's available, you can select pivot and you can start to create those pivot charts. It's just another tool in your tool belt to advance the analytics from the data that you might be looking at within TrackVia. All right, the last thing that I want to cover off on is Sandbox and promotable Sandbox. So if you have sandboxes enabled within your account, similar to integrations, you'll go up to your menu here and you will see an option for Sandbox environments. Most folks have one sandbox. You can have multiple sandboxes. It's just a matter of getting that turned on. So some folks have up to, I think, 5 sandboxes, but there may be folks who have some more. And to create a sandbox is very straightforward. We're going to go ahead and hit create sandbox. We'll give it a name. Let's call it trial sandbox. And then you're going to get this question of, do you want it to be promotable or not? You can make sandboxes non-promotable, and they will still just be a test area for you to test things out. The problem with that, though, is that you cannot then push those changes into production. Some people don't want to push changes in production. Some people just want a place where they can test things out, try new things in TrackVia, break things without worrying about updating to production. Some folks want a place where they can promote it, and we're going to go ahead and make this one promotable. I'm going to hit confirm on that, and that's going to start to create that sandbox. And as it's creating that sandbox, what it's doing is essentially it is taking a exact copy of our account, and it's going to make that available to me in a way so that I can start to make changes in there and test things out without actually influencing the production environment. So as Taylor mentioned, for our larger clients, this can be really important for just data validity, any type of structural change they want to make. They don't want to break things for folks that are using TrackVia day and night. So this can be a really great way to do that. While this is getting created, it usually takes about 1.5 minutes or so. One other thing I want to show off is we have a feature as well on our mobile side of things where we can actually white label our mobile application. For those of you that are utilizing mobile today, you go to the App Store or the Google Play Store, you download the TrackVia app, you log in with the same credentials that you would on the web, and you're off and running. The problem for some folks is they don't want to see a TrackVia app. They want to see an app that has their branding on it. They want it to be their logo, their colors, things like that. I don't have an exact example to show of that today, but I do want to call out one of our customers who may be on this webinar. It's VJ Cement. They take advantage of this feature. If you go into the App Store and you search for their company, great construction and concrete company out of the St. Louis area, you will actually see an app for VJ and some screens that may look familiar. So they're utilizing TrackVia's white label feature in order to create an application for their field users that looks and feels and is branded for VJ Cement. On the back end is TrackVia, but no one needs to know that. We remove all branding for it. So if that's something that would be beneficial to your business, certainly we can talk about how we can put that into your account as well. All right, now that our sandbox is created, I can go ahead and enter this sandbox. It's going to ask me who I want to enter the sandbox as. In my case, I only have one user within this account, but another benefit of sandboxes that's kind of unnoticed sometimes is that you can enter as anyone in the account. So if you're the admin and you need to troubleshoot something, you can actually log in through a sandbox as someone who might be coming to you with questions, see what they're seeing, and be able to better troubleshoot what they might be running into. I'm going to launch this sandbox just as myself, and what's going to happen is you're going to see we got a great big sandbox up here where our logo would normally be. This just lets me know that I am not working in production. Additionally, if I go back to my production environment, you're going to see that I've got a little lock here. That's because I've made a promotable sandbox. So we don't want changes happening in production while we might be making changes in the sandbox. So if you make a promotable sandbox, we're going to lock down production for a while. If you make a non-promotable sandbox, you can still make changes in production, obviously. And we'll just make a couple of changes here. Let's go ahead and I will go ahead and make a brand new dashboard, for example. Let's just call this Sandbox Dashboard. And on here, I'll just add a couple of different elements here. What they are isn't necessarily important, but what's going to happen is as I make these changes in the sandbox, when we go to actually promote it, this is now going to be an available dashboard for me. Everything is going to carry over for us. So if I go ahead and change the actual role here and I allow our sandbox dashboard to be available, that'll all start to be available for me in production as well. And the benefit of this, obviously, is that as you make these changes, you'll be able to reflect these changes within production very easily. But the other benefit is you could go as far as building whole new applications in TrackVia, promote that sandbox, and it'll all flow over to production. So we've made a quick change here. What I'm going to do now is actually go in to our production environment, go back to that sandbox and hit promote. We have a little prompt that is going to say, you're going to make sure that the changes you make are the changes you want to make, and it's going to start to promote that sandbox. Again, it'll take a couple of minutes to push all those changes over into production, and then it's actually going to log me out of the system, and it'll ask me to log back in. But upon doing so, we will see those changes. So if I quickly get out of here and log back in.
And Brandon, maybe one thing I'll fill some airtime here with is the promotable sandbox is a great thing to be familiar with before you use it. You can always, demote your promotable sandbox, unlock production immediately, but check out our knowledge base and TrackVia University on the rules and who can access it and what happens and what's in your change logs. Implementing this as part of your development life cycle is beneficial in many ways. Just kind of know the rules to familiarize yourself, or call us up on the support line and ask. We'll tell you all about it.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Taylor. And you can see here, we're now back in production. There's my sandbox dashboard. Here's the changes I've made to it. And to Taylor's point, if I go back here, I can actually look at the change log, and I can have that change log emailed to me to say exactly what changed while I was in that sandbox environment if I want to. All right, we've got about 4 minutes left. We've certainly covered a lot from the presentation to the demonstration. I'm going to close us out here with one last slide. And on this, I think it's important to, first of all, thank everyone for attending today. We really appreciate it. Certainly many of you, if not all of you, are current customers of TrackVia, and we're incredibly appreciative of your business and continuing to want to learn more. The more that you learn with TrackVia, the more you can grow with it, and ultimately the more value it starts to provide. One thing that I will call out is if you're interested in any of these features you saw today, a handful of them do come at additional prices. Some of them don't. The app scripts, the flows, things like that, everybody should have access to. But a handful of them, the Workato, the form stack, things like that, do come at an additional fee. But we are offering some end-of-year promotions. So if any of this seems really interesting to you, if it's something you've been thinking about, there's no better time to jump on it than now, because we will have some discounts going on to the end of the year. If you have any other inquiries, you're not sure who to reach out to, not sure who your account manager is, anything like that, I've also included myself and Taylor's emails up here. So if you need to reach out to anyone for any reason, we can certainly route that to the right person. We've got about 3 minutes left here. We do have a couple of different questions. I'm going to say we can maybe take one question, and Taylor and I can do our best to answer that question. But then any other questions that have been sent in, we will certainly be addressed to everybody after the webinar is complete. So I'm looking at the list of questions that we have here. One question was, with Workato, am I able to connect into my entire Microsoft suite, things like Power BI, SharePoint, etc.? That's a great question. And the short answer there is yes. In this case, for Microsoft, Workato does in fact have those pre-built connectors, so it can be pretty streamlined in order to connect into those tools. We've got a few customers that connect into the whole Microsoft suite, but then as I mentioned, we've got a handful of folks that also connect using Workato, and there's not a pre-built connector. Taylor, do we have a couple examples of folks that use it that don't have a pre-built connector that you can think of?
Yeah, some internal systems. There's also just any software that's not listed on that page that has API and documentation is fair game. Obviously, you need a developer or use our development team for that purpose. But the short answer is, if you have an API, we can integrate.
Yep, definitely. So, it's something that can be very powerful. We've seen folks get really complicated with Workato, where they're throwing if-then loops in, and if the data is already there, we don't need to send it. If the data is not, we do send it, or just very simple sort of linear processes as well. So there's a handful of different ways you can do that. We've got a couple more questions in the queue, but unfortunately we are pushing up against time, so I'm going to go ahead and call it now, but we will certainly get those answered. Again, from myself, from Taylor, want to thank everybody for attending today. Thank you for being TrackVia customers. And if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to anyone on the team here.
And one last thing, guys, within 48 hours, you'll receive a copy of this recording. If you need to share it or re-reference something, you'll have the full recording, and we'll get all those questions answered that are left in the queue.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone.
Take care, everybody.